Guard play took over the UCLA and Oklahoma game yesterday.
You are Locked On Women's Basketball, your daily podcast on women's basketball. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey everyone, welcome to Locked On Women's Basketball, your number one podcast for women's basketball. Joining alongside me is Sophia Jones, our certified hooper and analyst. I am Kalia Butler, your sideline reporter and washed up high school basketball player. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use Locked On NBA for $20 off your first purchase. Walking us through our episode today, we're going to see what it will take to get some big stars to go to Project B. We're going to go over South Carolina and some top 20 teams that are going to be playing tonight. But yesterday was a top 6 showdown between UCLA and Oklahoma. UCLA defeated Oklahoma 73-59, which started as a very close game, especially in the first half. But UCLA just able to create that separation in the second. Sophia, what did you see from UCLA?
Yeah, I'll first go back to your introduction because in our pre-production meeting, we can both introduce ourselves as carrot cake and oatmeal enthusiasts. So gotta throw that in there. But like you said, UCLA and Oklahoma, it felt really competitive throughout the majority of the game. But UCLA, I think their veteran and maturity really showed in that second half because they never look like they're getting flustered and they just continue to wear down Oklahoma with their stifling defense and just taking their time and being patient for what they wanted on offense. But like you said, it was a highly anticipated matchup between Lauren Betts and Reagan Beers, battle of some of the highest rated centers in women's college basketball. But it was really the guard play that was showcased. Gianna Neepkins for UCLA, she had a great showing. She was one of the transfers that we really had an eye on going into the season. She's from Utah, from the University of Utah, but she finished with 20 points, 8 of 14 field goals, so very efficient there. But also Zaya Van, I think she really helped to carry and lead Oklahoma in that first half with her motor on both ends of the floor. She finished with 13 points, 6 rebounds. She was just in everyone's face, getting up and down very quickly. But I still think even though Lauren Betts and Reagan Beers, maybe their numbers weren't on par to what they're used to, but even you can tell the way that they move on the floor, how gravitational they still are.
Yes, and when we're looking at their stats of the night, Lauren Betts, 9 points, 10 rebounds, 4 blocks. Reagan Beers had 14 rebounds. She had 7 points, but she also was out for a portion of the game after she fell and kind of had a little bit of a knee scare, was able to come back in. But we're talking about the versatility of some of these teams, especially when we were speaking about UCLA prior to the season starting. The main focus was going to be who else can produce offensively outside of Lauren. How can you continue to run your offense without just Lauren Betts being your main player, basically. And I think this game really proved that UCLA has a lot of threats this season. It's not just in their center, having a 6'7" center. Now you have to deal with all their guards on top of it. We talked about Gianna Neepkins, Angela Dugalich as well, 16 points, 15 rebounds. She has been an absolute spark for them, and we're just seeing this continued depth for UCLA. Kiki Rice also scoring in double digits with 10 points. Gabriella Jaquez had 11 points on the night. So you have 3 different players that have hit double-digit numbers, and then Lauren Betts, obviously, when you're speaking about a player that has a lot of impact, it's not always scoring-wise, but the presence of her being inside and basically drawing that defense in is allowing her guards to put up this level of production. And then when their guards are going and Lauren is going, it's really scary to watch.
Exactly. And even on the defensive end, Lauren Betts, she finished with 4 blocks on the night. So she was really, anytime a guard was funneling their player down to the rim or to a specific area, Lauren Betts is just there lurking around the basket, waiting with that verticality to get some of those shots out of there. So you can see that dynamic work on that end of the floor. But just like you said, I think for UCLA, where one of the biggest questions was what can they do if Lauren Betts necessarily isn't having as great of a game? And I think this was a good example on how they all can respond to that, especially when you're looking at Angela Duglic coming in, being that other forward and doing her thing. She can stretch out the floors and hit those threes, get a lot of rebounds. And especially when you put your biggest player on Lauren, she has that mismatch down low as well. But for some of those other players, Gabriela Jaquez, she is always gonna be a threat with her energy and just her presence on the floor, getting things done, hustling. She's a great hustle player. But I think Charlie Sledger Walker is another player that is still finding her footing a little bit with the UCLA team. But once the court starts to open up more for her, that'll be another threat. I think for Lauren as well, this was a good game to have early on in the season because Reagan Beers is such a great center. Betts did end up with 7 turnovers on the night. A lot of that was just her catching the ball down low and not being as decisive, holding it into a little bit, bringing it down low. When you're 6'7", you got to keep the ball up high, away from all the other hands. So I think this was a good opportunity for her to know what she needs to get better at as well, and just with her teammates learning how to play off of that.
I agree with you. But UCLA also did dominate on the boards, which was really big for them too. 59 total rebounds compared to Oklahoma's 43. So that really helped them control, obviously, not only possessions, but tempo as well, being able to get those rebounds, get out and run. And they also had a really good third quarter push after being somewhat of a tight first half. They were able to pull away in the third with an 11-1 run. And that was just really key in shifting the momentum of the game.
Definitely. And Oklahoma is a very solid team. And I think they really thrive on speeding their opponents up and playing fast. They have some great athletes on their team that can really just put their heads down and get to the rim at any given moment. So for UCLA to have that composure to stretch their lead and then really maintain it, I think, again, is just a testament to the maturity on that roster. But for Oklahoma, they're a very young team and they're going to continue to grow and learn and be really, really solid. Aaliyah Chavez, one of the highly rated high school recruits that they were able to get. She's a freshman this year. She was in a little bit of foul trouble early, but these are great situations for her, I think, to continue to just refine her game because Oklahoma's going to need her to be a major threat. She finished with 11 points, but she was 4 of 16, so still looking for some of that efficiency, which again is difficult to do when you're getting subbed in and out of the game because of foul trouble. But I really liked their guard play. Sahara Williams is another one of those just really energetic, puts her head down and gets it done type players. She's a bit undersized for that forward position, but her energy makes up for it. She doesn't play like her height essentially. But I think Oklahoma will still continue to be solid. It's just a matter of putting it all together. When you have 2 heavy hitters like this, the game can look a little ugly, to be quite frank. And I think, again, for both these teams to get this out of their system early, it'll be really good to set themselves up for their tough conference schedules.
A good matchup for both teams, UCLA being able to prove that they can score without only utilizing Lauren Betts, but also Oklahoma being able to showcase that they have some good threats and they have some good arsenal. It's more of when you're going against a basically senior team in UCLA, and you have a young group that's still coming together. 14 points truly is not that bad. The score looks worse than it truly was, but they have a lot of promise, as you mentioned. Today, we're going to get into some of the teams that are within the top 20 that are going to be playing tonight, previewing what we can expect. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on all the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same game parlay for a shot at bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So some exciting games are still on the way, but we are still seeing some teams playing within their it's all the preseason games basically before regular season, early on games to kind of test the waters of what you're going to look like this year. But a game to look forward to tonight that should be relatively exciting is going to be an in-state clash between Clemson and number 2 South Carolina. Another one to look out for today, Prairie View versus number 20 Oklahoma State, and Maine versus NC State, who is in that number 10 spot. Sophia, let's talk about Clemson and South Carolina first. What can we expect from this game? What are you excited about?
For South Carolina, they haven't had the strongest schedule, I think you can say, for their only 2 games so far this season, beating Grand Canyon and Bowling Green. So I think that this matchup against Clemson, who is in the ACC, will be a good ramp up because they do face USC on Saturday. That is going to be a heck of a matchup I'm very excited for. But Clemson still ACC school, so you're getting into those Power Four squads more. And we love in-state rivalries as well. I think as much as some of these conferences are being shifted, whenever you can go back to something as simple as just in-state and geography, it really helps to just revitalize some of those rivalries, I guess you can say. I don't know if this would be considered a rivalry for women's basketball, but potentially maybe in other sports. I am not sure. But Clemson, they were predicted to finish towards the bottom of the ACC this season. But I'm still looking forward to seeing what they will do this year because they have a top 5 2026 recruiting class. Sean Poppy has done a great job recruiting so far. And I think when you have a high caliber group of recruits coming in, a couple top 50 in ESPN's rankings that will be playing in Clemson next season, this is the type of year that you want to use to really lay that foundation and have your other players step right into that. I think so. Very excited to see what Clemson is going to do with that. And again, just how they're going to ramp up to embracing that talent that is incoming. One of their assistant coaches, I know John Goldberg, he actually recruited me back when I was in high school and he was at Chattanooga. And fun story, but when I was calling through some of the coaches that recruited me after I had committed, he was the one I was looking forward to the least because he was so nice, and I felt like we developed a bond. But like I said, he was just so nice, and I was like, "Oh, this is gonna hurt. I feel like I'm disappointing him." But knowing that they have that kind of just basketball knowledge and recruiting ability, again, makes me excited to see what Clemson is going to look like in the future. But for South Carolina, that matchup against USC is potentially a game that you could see down the line in the tournament. And you want to make sure that you're getting the proper tests.
Yeah, I've been able to see Clemson firsthand being at an ACC school. They are one of those teams that will consistently be ranked a little bit lower within the ACC, but the caliber of players that they have and the way that they actually play doesn't represent where they are within the poll very well. They're always a very strong program. They had head coach Amanda Butler while I was there. I rooted for her because we both last name were Butler. But they had a coaching change recently too. Sean Poppy's entering just his second season. So Clemson is still in a rebuilding phase. Like, obviously, you have 1 year as a head coach. He's only within his second year. You have to give this program a little bit of time to kind of build back up. But as you mentioned, I think it's really great just for community and culture wise to have teams that are playing against each other within the same state. I think anybody that I have ever met that is from South Carolina, they love South Carolina. They love being from there. They're a heavy community based family and they love sports. They're very involved in basketball. So and I think this is what like stuff like Dawn Staley eats up. And this is why she schedules certain things too, where she loves the community aspect, being able to bring all of South Carolina together, not just anybody that, loves the Gamecocks, because who doesn't? But bringing all of South Carolina together for one simple thing of bringing women's basketball together as well. But in terms of who's going to win today, aside from that, uh, South Carolina will likely beat Clemson today. But excited to see how South Carolina can continue to improve, especially on the defensive end, which is something Coach Daly said that she really wants to hone in on. Oklahoma State has been pretty good so far too. They started their season off pretty well, but again, they're kind of playing these mid-major teams, lower mid-major or Division 2 teams. So that one's going to be another one where we'll maybe see a blowout game here. But Maine versus NC State. Maine's actually a pretty solid program as well. I think the Maine NC State game could be pretty exciting. NC State's obviously going to want to get back on track, but when we're thinking of some of these lower level Division 1 schools, this is their opportunity to prove themselves. And I think Maine has the capability of, if there were an upset to happen today, Maine would be the team to do it.
I mean, just kind of like how you said, where when some of these teams get put or have the opportunity to face higher competitions, it's a great litmus test to see where they're at and if they really can compete with other teams that will most likely go to the NCAA tournament. But for NC State, this is a good opportunity to get back on track. For their first two games, they beat Tennessee, but then lost to USC, which was a really tight one. They have a solid non-conference schedule, which I always enjoy seeing because it provides for opportunities like this where if there are certain things that they saw against USC, primarily, I would highlight their late game execution and just potentially turnovers and going into offensive lulls. That is exactly what you want to work out against Maine. Those are the games when a coach might tell you, I want everyone to touch the ball before I see a shot go up. And every time that it does happen, I'm telling the Dobo to mark that down. And that's how much you're running tomorrow because I've had that done to us before. But I think not saying that's what's going to happen, speaking from experience, but again, it's one of those games where you can really prioritize your execution.
Yes, and I apologize to anyone that might be able to hear my dog in the background who chooses every incorrect time to like come harass me and show me her toys. But after this, we're going to get into how can they bring big stars to Project B.
Basketball season is officially here, and nothing beats being in the arena for those opening games. But let's be real, getting tickets can be a total headache. Between waiting in queues, surprise fees, and prices that jump right before checkout, it's easy to get frustrated when all you want to do is cheer on your team. That's where Game Time comes in, the app that gives fans the advantage. It's your ultimate life hack for scoring some amazing NBA tickets fast, easy, and stress-free. I recently used Game Time to grab seats for the Sacramento Kings game, which Golden One Center is the place that the women's tournament will be, or the Sweet 16 and part of the Elite Eight will be held. So I can recommend Golden One Center's popcorn from experience. But take the guesswork out of buying NBA tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first.
If you guys need any level of food suggestions, Sophia and I are here to do it. We were having a whole debrief on the type of oats that we make. As she mentioned earlier, we love carrot cake. So if you're a big fan of the show, feel free to send us some carrot cake. But also, we can add popcorn to the list now, too. Plenty of recommendations here.
Like, just if you guys ever want to talk about food, please comment like what cuisine you're like. I have Jamaican family, so my preference is Jamaican. Kalia, you can say your preference.
My mom is Greek, so I grew up eating, and my grandma is literally from Greece. So all I do is eat Greek food. We were both saying how we always have our respective cultures' food in our fridge or in our freezer to save for later. But yeah, if you guys ever need recommendations, let us know. We're here to help. We've got it. We can be the foodies for you. But there's been so much talk about obviously these new leagues that are being developed. Unrivaled, still relatively new, only getting into its second season. Now, Project B has joined the conversation as well. But something that has been relatively consistent with both of the leagues is that some of the biggest stars in basketball are not in the leagues. And when I'm thinking of some of the biggest stars, I'm thinking of a Caitlin Clark and Asia Wilson. Obviously, Angel Reese was in Unrivaled last season, but chose not to be in it this season. You have a Nafisa Kalia or Brianna Stewart. But when you're thinking of obviously somebody from college basketball who gave a lot of eyes to the WNBA in Caitlin Clark and Asia Wilson, who was now a 4-time MVP, who was the first woman to do that in all of WNBA history. You start to question if either of them were to join an Unrivaled or this new league in Project B, what would that look like? But also, why wouldn't they want to join it? Sophia, what are your thoughts?
I think when you look at the prestige of the WNBA, of course, they're fighting for higher salaries right now because there are a lot of other leagues that are offering more money. But it's the perception of the WNBA that makes all the players want to play in that league because it is the top talent. And I think when you look at some of these other places where they are offering more money, it's really just gonna take time for that perception to build up. Like with Unrivaled, I think they already have a great brand, but it's still a embryonic stage really with their growth. This is only their second year. Project B is not even a complete league yet, but they're looking to get into that next season. I think when you're really trying to attract some of these stars, that's where I say, of course, money definitely helps, but you want to make sure that you have the right prestige and image around it so that you can get it because you can attract those players. I think of that Diana Taurasi example where she sat out a WNBA season because her Russian club paid her to sit out. They had that kind of backing, and I think if you can get into situations like that, then yeah, that's how you're gonna get some of these players. Even if you look at EuroLeague, where we've seen players opt to play over there between a Gabby Williams or Emma Mieseman, Maureen Johannes. There are those players that have sat out WNBA seasons to compete in EuroLeague because it is more money. It's just really, I think one of the biggest questions is just going to be the schedules because these basketball seasons can go year round and players need rest at some point.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest part where, in my opinion, at some point, one of these leagues is going to have to give. And with the WNBA, in my opinion, is always going to be there. Realistically, those are domestic games. Not everybody has the opportunity to go overseas, experience this F1 style, which again is really cool and important for the global aspect of things. Even with Unrivaled, if you don't have a home team, it's very difficult to keep these sort of leagues afloat. And not everybody, people want to experience the game firsthand. Not everybody obviously can go to Miami to experience these games. And I love the concept of it with the 3v3, but realistically, either of these new leagues might not last long when we're thinking of how much time and effort goes into all of this. Obviously, you have to prioritize the safety of your body. Injury risk rises the more that you are playing year round. And Asia Wilson made it clear that she didn't want to do Unrivaled, not because she didn't think it was a cool concept or that she didn't want to support her fellow WNBA players, but for the sheer fact that she wanted to rest her body. She wanted to enjoy her off season because she dedicates so much time and effort into being the best. And even the best need a little bit of rest, not to rhyme. But it's hard because when you're thinking of all these new leagues that are being created, it's you. At what point do they get on? All these players get on the same front and have a certain level of contingency with each other of, okay, this is what's going to work, this is what's not going to work. But if you have a lot of star players that are going into all these different leagues and then some that aren't even participating, and then you still have to hold into question what WNBA season looks like with negotiations, it just kind of seems like there's a little too much happening at one time.
Yeah, and you want to be careful within the amount of chaos because I think one of the most important leverage pieces for the players going into these CBA negotiations is having a united front and having the backing behind all that as well. I think it's fair to say that these players have the public and the people behind them, but when you have a little bit of, like you said, just a lot going on, players going maybe to EuroLeague, players going to Project B, players going to Unrivaled. I don't want to say it'll create maybe tension and friction, but I think about how tight knit that Unrivaled group was together and how whenever, oh, like if they were on the same team there, how they and then their opposite teams in the W, it's still like a lot of, I guess, sisterhood, you could say. Some of that is similar for EuroLeague. Could it be similar for Project B? But with just the amount of options going on right now, if these players still want to have the WNBA be the premier women's basketball league in the world, it will still be important to have that solidarity between all of them. And am finding it interesting to see how they will navigate that with just a lot of options right now.
Exactly, a lot of options. But even like getting back to the point of how do you attract, because Project B realistically needs a star. Nneka Ogwumike absolutely is a star, but when we're thinking of household names, sometimes maybe Nneka is not necessarily in that conversation. You think of a Asia Wilson, you think of a Caitlin Clark. I don't see them, not that I don't see them, but at this moment, I don't necessarily see them being swayed to join these leagues just yet. They haven't, obviously, with Unrivaled. Project B, that's a lot of money being thrown at them. But we also have to understand that Asia Wilson has a shoe. Caitlin Clark is Caitlin Clark. They're like, Caitlin, you're the mayor of basically Indiana. You're the mayor of the Midwest, essentially. People, anytime Sydney Colson doesn't like something, they're like, get Caitlin Clark on it. Or even the Stud Buds were like, somebody called Caitlin Clark.
Yeah, just when they're trying to get into the club, like that's the type of pull that she has.
She has that level of pull. So they're making their money and finances other places. So they're fine with maintaining their WNBA contracts because that's not where they're even getting a majority of their money. For some other players, like Aneka, is she one of the more higher paid players on the Storm? Yes. But again, 2 million compared to 245,000 are two completely different numbers. So it's hard. I feel like it is hard to attract some of those players who maybe don't really want to go overseas, want to stay within the WNBA, want to, have their brand deals, and that's the money that they're making, and they're cool. They enjoy their off season. So yeah, even when you get down to schedules, what that all looks like of certain players maybe missing some training camp. There's a lot of different factors to it. But when we get down to the nitty gritty, we need to know what the CBA negotiations are looking like because we haven't heard anything about it.
Nope. And they have until November 30th to decide something. And like you said, we haven't heard anything on these CBA negotiations. A lot of it, I could assume, is happening closed doors. But at least before, I felt like we were getting some kinds of reports, even if from random spokespeople. We were hearing things. We're not hearing any. We are not hearing anything right now, so we don't know what that is looking like.
Exactly. But hopefully we get more information within the coming days and weeks because we are getting closer to November 30th. But thank you so much for tuning